on page 4,
They came and talked to Tom.
it's Colonel Benson that mentioned.
I wouldn't talk or be on camera.
Good evening. Tonight we have our welcome to the March 4th Planning Board meeting. We have a 10-item agenda this evening. We have 2 items for consent agenda. Consent agenda A is Private Way, Dakota Cummings. Consent agenda B is Private Way Amendment, Grant Gushy. Item 1 is a public hearing, Site Plan and Subdivision Amendment, Moody's Coworker Owned. Item 2, public hearing, Site Plan, Gen X Capital Partners. Item 3 is a discussion, Land Use and Development Code Amendment, LD 2003. Item 4 is another discussion, Land Use and Development Code Amendment, Floodplain. Item 5, discussion, Land Use and Development Code Amendment, Zoning Map Amendment. Item 6, discussion, Site Plan and Subdivision Pre-Application, Triano Properties LLC. Item 7 is another discussion, Site Plan Pre-Application, Kalido Development Group. Item 8, discussion, Private Way, Greg McCormick, Samantha Drive. Item 9, discussion, Preliminary Subdivision, Gary and Megan Jordan, Guardian Estates. Item 10, discussion, Subdivision Pre-Application, JDP LLC, North Gorham Road Subdivision. And if we may have a roll call, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Frank.
Present.
Mr. Walsh.
Present.
Mr. Burrows.
Present.
Mr. Hager.
Here.
Mr. Benson.
Here.
Mr. Delaney.
Present.
Mr. Grassi.
Present. I will mention this being a very full agenda. One of our board rules is that no agenda item will be taken up at a meeting after 10 p.m. Unless the lateness rule is waived. I would imagine we would not waive it if there is still considerable items remaining, but we'll see how that goes. First up would be approval of the February 5th Planning Board minutes. And maybe we can hear from the Secretary.
Right. There was only one minor misprint or misspelling of a word. Roby Drive was spelled R-O-B-Y on page 3. Elsewhere it is R-O-B-I-E. That was it.
Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I have several corrections, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Starting on page 2, underneath Vincent Grassi moved, it says Committee Chair David Walsh. I don't recall Mr. Walsh being elevated to the committee chair. I think we should strike that. Just
All right.
board member, perhaps.
Yep.
If I continue, please.
Yes.
On page 3 of 6, I was elevated to committee chair. I don't think so. The second paragraph. Further down, paragraph below where it says Mr. Benson, it again says committee chair David Walsh. Should not be committee chair. Directly below that, the motion, William Benson moved and David Walsh seconded to forward to the pedestrian overlay zone amendment to the Town Council with a recommendation of adoption. Motion carried 6 yeas, 1 abstain. Mr. Chairman, I did not abstain. I voted against.
Okay.
If I may continue?
Sure.
Thank you.
Please.
My recollection on page 4, please, in the middle, Mr. Hager voiced his support for the White Birch Lane connection, et cetera, et cetera. Fourth line down, it says, Mr. Walsh expressed hesitation to vote for the proposal without guarantee on a Ridgeway. I believe that was Colonel Benson.
No. That was not correct. I had concerns.
You did? I remember.
Yeah,
Colonel
maybe we
Benson.
both did, but I
been after the meeting.
certainly had concerns about
Might have
that.
been after the meeting. Thank you. Okay. That's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? If not, may we have a motion? Jim,
So moved.
second?
Second.
Mr. Benson, all in favor? Looks like all 7. Next item, Chairman's report. Just want to mention, this is my last meeting because it is my last month on the board, and I just want to thank the town for the opportunity and thank the planning department for working with me and express the enjoyment that I had working with this board and previous boards. So thank you very much, and I wish the town good luck, and I'll do what I can from a civilian position. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince.
Thank you. Committee reports. We'll start off with the Ordinance Review Committee.
The Ordinance Review Committee has not met since our last meeting.
Thank you. And next would be Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee.
Our committee has not met as well.
Thank you. And that takes us to Administrative Review Report.
We have not had any applications submitted recently, so we don't have anything to report.
All right, thank you. And that brings us to Consent Agenda. The first consent agenda is Consent Agenda A, which is Private Way, Dakota Cummings, 59 Wood Road, a request to construct a private way to serve a single-family house lot, map 54, lot 16, zoned R. The applicant is represented by Andrew Morrell with BH2M. If there is no reason to pull this off consent agenda, then we can go ahead with a motion. If anyone has a reason to take it off consent agenda, please speak now. Otherwise, you can make a motion. Did that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No one else on the board? My motion is to move the Dakota Cummings request for approval for a 447-foot private way off Wood Road, designed to the town's one-lot dwelling unit gravel private way standard, located on map 54, lot 16, and situated in the rural zoning district, based on findings of fact and with the conditions of approval as written by the town planner and amended by the planning board.
Is there a second?
Second.
And all in favor? Looks like 7-0. Thank you. The next consent agenda is B, Private Way Amendment, Grant Gushy, Gushy Drive, request to reduce depth of unimproved land behind an existing hammerhead, map 75, lot 2.004, zoned SRMH. The applicant is represented by David Gushy. Again, if there's no reason, or if there is a reason, please speak now. If not, feel free to make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question on the sketch.
Okay.
Is there someone that can represent this?
Yeah, we will remove it from the consent agenda and take the item. So I guess it becomes the new item 1. And I guess we can ask the applicant to step forward and come up to the podium.
Mr. Chair, point
Yes.
of order, do we need to vote to take it off consent agenda?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, we'll take a vote to take
Can
it
I-
off consent agenda?
Can I not ask a question without taking it off consent? It's just a
I don't think
clarification
so.
on the drawing.
I don't think we can, no.
No, if there's any questions of the board, you have to remove it from the consent agenda.
I'll withdraw my question, thank you.
Okay, you may sit down, sir. Sorry about that.
Just a point of order, so that includes any update from the staff on previous questions?
That's true.
I mean, it's coming back to us because we didn't vote on it previously.
Consent agenda items, you are relying on what is written in the review memo we give you for all the details. If you agree with it, then you vote to approve it. If you don't agree or have any questions, you remove it from consent agenda and discuss it. Ask more questions.
Give everyone a minute. If no questions or no need to think about taking this off, if someone has a motion, we will take that anytime. Jim?
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Motion to move to grant Gushy's request for approval for an amendment to a private way off Ira Lane, designed to the town's 2-6 lot dwelling unit gravel private way standard, located on map 75, lot 2-5, and situated in the suburban residential zoning district, based on the findings of fact and with conditions of approval as written by the town planner and amended by the planning board.
And is there a second?
I second it.
Good. All in favor? Looks like six.
One abstention.
Yeah, 6 and 1 abstention. Benson abstention. Thank you. We will move to the regular portion of the meeting, starting with item 1, a public hearing, site plan and subdivision amendment, Moody's Coworker Owned Incorporated, Moody's Truck Center, a request for approval to divide Lot 3 on Raceway Drive into lots 3 and 4, and to develop Lot 4 into a 27,600 square foot truck repair facility. Map 39, Lot 2.003, zoned NMUD. The applicant is represented by Sean Frank with Sebago Technics. And if we could have some background from planning.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. So this item is the first time this item has come before the board. The applicant's proposing to divide a 22.07 acre lot in an existing commercial subdivision off Narragansett Street into 2 new lots, one of which is to remain undeveloped, and the other is a proposal for a 27,600 square foot truck automobile repair building with associated infrastructure. The original subdivision was approved in 2016. So a few items of note to flag for the board. So there's some outstanding items we're looking for. The applicant has not provided a photometric plan. Portland Water District ability to serve letters were pending. We did receive one of them today for public water, so we're still looking for public sewer. DEP stormwater permit is pending. Vehicle turning diagram's been requested, and trip generation for the subdivision as a whole, not just for the proposed truck repair facility, should be provided as well. The proposed development's compatible with the comprehensive plan and the zoning for this area. There's no natural resource concerns except potentially for bat habitat, and that's something the applicant has been recommended to look into with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The site plan shows a proposed 10-foot wide gravel bicycle pedestrian access trail. It's suggested the board ask the applicant for more details about whether this will be established via an easement, and if so, that should be identified in the plans. Applicant's engineered has stated that they'll ensure that the design does not cause water to discharge to the adjacent site, which is within the MS4 regulated area. And the site plan shows a stormwater pipe passing under the right-of-way at the end of Raceway Drive. Raceway Drive is currently private, however, could potentially be accepted by the town as a public way. So as such, it would be recommended that a stormwater pipe not be installed under the right-of-way for that. Finally, the pedestrian connection has not been established to the sidewalk on Raceway Drive, so we look for the applicant to address pedestrian connections. And there are several other peer review and engineer comments. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And now would be a good time to hear from the applicant.
Thank you, Vince. Appreciate your service too, by the way. I'm Sean Moody from Moody's Coworker Owned. We're actually now majority coworker owned, so I don't know if my job's at risk or not. We'll see what happens. Sean Frank's going to give us the technical background about the project, but basically, we hope you support the proposal. It's located right across from Harvey. If you're familiar with a manufacturing facility, that's really beautiful. Look, you know, what they had to go through to get it, but they stuck with it. It's a great asset to the town, and hopefully we could be a good neighbor right beside him. So any questions for me, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Sean Frank. I'm a civil engineer with Sebago Technics. Let me just, I know you have a busy agenda tonight, so I'll try to be as brief as I can. Can you hear me all right? Can you hear me through the mic? Good, thank you. Item one that we're asking for is an amendment to the subdivision. As Sean stated, the initial development was for Raceway Drive so that we could develop the Harvey site out back, which Harvey did themselves. That left a front portion lot out through here, and there was a third lot, which was on the other side of Raceway Drive, just by the right-of-way. We're proposing a new lot line here, basically to divide this piece of property, so we'll have 14 acres in the front, which will remain undeveloped, and a little over 7, almost 8 acres in the back, and that's where the proposed development is. As a staff report, and Sean mentioned, basically what we're proposing is a 27,600 square foot building, basically for a truck auto repair facility, with a small office up here in the corner. What we'll have, again, here's the entrance, if you will, to the Harvey, to the front entrance. The back entrance is back here. We're proposing an individual access drive to come in for the employees and for the front parking area, as well as for access out, if you will, from the back of the building over and through here. I did discuss with staff our thoughts in terms of a pretty wide driveway right through here to kind of separate the truck traffic. Again, the whole point of this facility is really for, truck repairs, which can be anything, box trucks, dump trucks, but at the same time, 18-wheelers as well. The city requirements is that we can't be any more than 65 feet off from the right-of-way in terms of the front setback requirement. And what I didn't want to have done was, trucks pulling in off from Raceway Drive and not being able to get in and access those doors, or if there was a truck waiting at one door, again, trying to be able to get in. So we have 4 overhead doors in this location. I went with a wide driveway just so we could come out of Raceway Drive and easily access those overhead doors with the larger vehicles. Obviously, if I was down on Narragansett Street, I wouldn't be asking for this, but this is basically a dead-end road, Raceway Drive, which is commercial. We have Harvey on one side and us on the other. So under this particular circumstance, I felt a little bit more comfortable making that request. There was some discussion regarding lighting, and we just will have building-mounted lighting associated with this. We will have a photometrics plan. I will get that into staff. And as well as the truck turning. The other part of that was traffic movement in terms of combining our trips with Harvey. And we have done that. We just want to make sure that DOT is satisfied with the way that we have done that. You can either based upon the actual operations of the facilities or the square footage of the facilities. We just want to make sure that DOT is comfortable with that. Overall stormwater management basically consists of constructing a wet pond out to the rear. You can see my outfall. This was the pipe I was showing going down through there. It was cutting through the right-of-way, and we will relocate that pipe just to make sure it stays out of the right-of-way as requested. We are also showing a 10-foot gravel pedestrian bike path going along the property line, which connects into an existing path over at the sports arena, and then ties into a lot of other bike paths going along the back of the other Moody property on the other side of the street. We will provide some type of a crosswalk connection to get us onto the sidewalk on the other side. We do have a row of trees proposed along the property line, foundation plantings, if you will, along the front of the building, and some additional street trees along Raceway Drive. Water service is available, and part of the water line is also, Portland Water District handles capacity for the sewer, so within that same letter for the water was the sewer capacity as well. Again, just like with Harvey, we'll have a small pump station, pumps into the existing sewer system on Raceway Drive. Water's available on Raceway Drive, we'll extend that in. Three-phase power will be extended from Narragansett Street. We'll put a new pole in, come down underground from there, and then come in to service the building from that. In terms of the building, obviously this isn't right along Narragansett Street, but actually sitting further back. But this would be the elevation, if you will, that you would see from Narragansett Street. Again, the idea of having the office building, trying to break up the facade with the metal panels and the windows and some of the brickwork associated with that. Again, the overhead doors, if you will, along the Raceway Drive, and again, trying to align the vehicles to be able to get into those doors. The doors on the other side of the building, again, which will allow for either through traffic or both-way traffic with some storage on the other side. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would conclude my presentation and be happy to answer any questions you folks have. We have seen the review comments. We see them as relatively straightforward. We are into DEP for stormwater at this point, but would be hopeful that maybe we'd be ready to go for consent. Not at the next meeting, but as soon as we get that DEP permit and address the comments through staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is advertised as a public hearing, so we will open it up to the public. And public hearing, you come up to the podium and address the board with any comments you'd like us to consider. And when you come up, please state your name and address. So if anyone would like to make public comment, please step up at this time. It does not look like there's any public comment, so we will close that portion of this item and bring it back to the board. Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
David.
Sean, good presentation.
Thank you. I tried to hit all the points and try to be as quick as I could at the
I
same
had 5
time.
questions, you answered 4 of them. So, I got one more for you. I saw in there, I guess I saw some comment in the text about sidewalk. And what's your plan for sidewalk? As I understand, are you going to pay in lieu, or will there be sidewalk?
Is that off-site sidewalks? I don't know if I saw that, to be perfectly honest with you.
Is there anything required along Raceway Drive?
There is a sidewalk along Raceway Drive.
there is,
So
okay.
our intent was basically to connect that pedestrian slash into and make sure we connect to that sidewalk along
Okay.
Raceway Drive.
All right, I misread it then. That's good, thank you. Good-looking project.
Thank you.
So you had 4 questions, he answered them, and your 5th was no good, so that's pretty good. So, a lot of mine were answered as well. There's no wetland impacts?
There is no wetland wind impacts. And I did want to go back to the bats. I am sorry, Damon, because you had mentioned that, and I hadn't picked up on that. The bats are obviously associated with trees, and in this case, as you will know, that the part that we're developing there's no tree cutting required whatsoever. There are trees, obviously, to the back of the lot, with the part that is not being part of any of the development. But again, we should have no impact on the bats because we're not cutting one tree in association with the development.
That was one of my other questions.
Thank you. I just trying to get ahead of you in front of you on that one, Vincent. And again, as you folks will know, obviously, because the Harvey project and the roadway associated with that went through the full site location and development permitting process through the DEP, a lot of the things we'd be worried about, IFNW and habitats and things like that were all addressed as part of that original submission. So even though we are proposing a new lot per se within the subdivision itself has in fact been reviewed through the Maine Department of Environmental Protection under their site location and development permit process.
So This has to go consent, doesn't it? Because of the items we're waiting for? Could we approve it? Is that an option? So we're still waiting for
You're
some,
still waiting for a number of
Few
things,
items.
but you could put it on consent for the next agenda. If the applicant would be ready for that.
Yeah, my only, as I know this board is typically, and I know staff is typically like to have the DEP permit in hand, so I think that's why we were thinking certainly from a consent standpoint, but again, we'll leave it with you. We've submitted the application to the DEP, but I would anticipate we're certainly at least a couple of months before we'd receive that back from them. But at the same time, again, as we've looked through the staff review comments, I think the changes we'll make to this won't change the plan itself per se, except more the details associated with the plan. But I think in terms of the overall site plan, what you're seeing on this plan right now will pretty much be, or almost exactly be, the same thing that'll be the final approved plan as well.
any other questions?
So my question, based on that timeline, should the consent agenda then be placed for May instead of April?
You could say next available or whenever the applicant.
When the applicant is ready.
Ready.
When ready.
If you folks are comfortable with that, we certainly would be as well. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to place the plan on consent agenda when the applicant is ready to meet the requirements.
And is there a second?
Second.
David, all in favor? Looks like all 7, excuse me.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time
Thank you.
tonight. Shawnee, thank you, buddy.
Us to item 2. Public hearing. This is site plan Gen X Capital Partners LLC, luxury motor toys. A request for site plan approval for 40 condominium garage units with associated clubhouse. Zone OCI, map 34, lot 3.003, represented by John Witten, Jr., PE, with Haley Ward. And may we have some background from planning, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So this is the second time this application's come before the planning board. The applicant's proposing an amendment to a previously approved site plan that had been for a cannabis grow operation in the Old Canal Business Park. The park was originally approved in 2007. That site plan had been approved in 2022. So what they're looking to do now is to build 40 condominium units for luxury cars and other sorts of things like that, boats and et cetera, that can be stored there. So a few items of note to flag for the board. So ability to serve letter for public water and sewer is pending. Staff has discussed, and public Portland Water District has also discussed provision of oil water separators. The proposal meets the zoning and comprehensive plan requirements. There were no natural resource issues that were flagged. There's an existing DEP site location of development permit and natural resources permit as well for the Old Canal Business Park, and the applicant proposes to meet the conditions of those permits. Stormwater from the site would be directed into the existing infrastructure. So the applicant is proposing to create 36 parking spots. 42 are required based on the zoning. That's something the board should discuss with the applicant. There's a discussion of fencing and a gate, and that's something the board should discuss as well. It's not shown on the plans, and it's something that would be important to flag for emergency responder access. Sprinkler provisions also flagged, and several other staff and peer review comments. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. And now we can hear a presentation from the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Whitten, a civil engineer with Haley Ward, representing the project, and the applicant, Martin McClure, is here, along with his contractor, John DeSantis, as well, if you have any questions directly of the applicant. Thanks for having us tonight. We were in front of you a couple months ago, I believe, for a sketch plan review of this property. This is, I believe, the fourth proposal for Lot 3 in this industrial park, business park. And as was stated, this proposal includes a 40-unit condominium-type luxury storage unit that is about 27 by 37 each unit. Has ample room to store two good-sized vehicles, including sized enough for a boat to fit on one side and your nice car on the other side. And in the back quarter of the unit would be a kitchenette, full bathroom, and a mezzanine level kind of living room section with no bedrooms. It's not intended to be inhabitable. It's more of a luxury storage area with some nice amenities where you can hang out and watch a football game and look at your pretty car at the same time. This is not a maintenance garage facility, so there will be no major overhauls of vehicles or expected oil changes, things like that. And there will be a central clubhouse that would be available to members and would be a place that would have more on the line of a full kitchen and more of a gathering area for the larger gatherings that the members may want to have. Each unit would be separated from the other unit for privacy and security. Be an overhead door on the front with a man door, person door to get in, and ample room for access around. We have at least 45 feet in front of each unit for backing in and pulling out various vehicles, trailers. And the site would be restricted with a security gate at the entrance and would have a security system around for the members to feel at ease that their unit's being taken care of. The site will be serviced by public water, public sewer, and underground electric and communications conduits. And natural gas is available in Old Canal Way as well. As was mentioned, this was part of a previous approval, and the applicant is proposing to stay under all of the maximum allowances that were provided in those permits as far as impervious area, developed area, things like that. We have, as of last week, gotten approval, an ability to serve letter from the Portland Water District. The Portland Water District and the town were concerned, somewhat concerned about floor drains in each unit, and originally we had discussed that. And since our sketch plan meeting with you folks, we've decided to not propose any floor drains in the units and not connect those to the sewer. So the sewer connections would just be for the bathrooms and small kitchenettes for each unit, and a larger kitchen for the clubhouse. So. The thought is if there's any slight oil spills, leakage of vintage cars, motorcycles, things like that could be taken care of with absorbent pads, kitty litter type stuff, and disposed of properly. Like I said, there's no thoughts of pulling engines and switching out transmissions in these units. So about a third of the units we were not able to get gravity sewer in, so there will be a small pump station associated with this project, and we will finalize that design with Portland Water District before any construction permits are applied for. There were some comments about, some minor comments on stormwater and sewer. We will provide answers to those and have no objections to any of those comments. We understand it's part of a MS4 system and that there will be maintenance requirements for the catch basins and stormwater system itself. The system does tie into an existing culvert under Old Canal Way and goes across to an existing pond. It's part of the overall stormwater maintenance plan for the site. It does, the outlet for that, for our system, it's basically here. So there's a few hundred feet of natural woods that will be left between the outlet of our system and the inlet of the culvert that goes across Old Canal Way. And the woods around the wetlands will be left as is. We are not proposing to impact the full amount of wetlands that was originally permitted in the NRPA permits for the park. And we are not disturbing the stormwater drainage easements along the frontage of the property. So we did show a fence around the property during the sketch plan and part of our process. And again, the applicant has decided to not fence the exterior, but to just rely on a security fence across the driveway. So that is one thing that we would clarify on any follow-up plans. So we feel that the systems are in place for this. We will make any clarifications and respond to review comments, excuse me, and feel like, you know, none of those responses are changing the scope of the project or the goals of the project. It would still be the same basic layout, still same utilities, same stormwater plan. So, Mark, unless you have anything specific. Oh, I do have some updated. Oh yeah, sorry. The units will be sprinkled. We do have fire and water lines proposed, and we did get, Mark did put together some nice quick renderings. So I believe the initial rendering that we showed you at sketch plan did show an outside balcony that has been deleted, and have gone with more uniform roof slopes for stormwater control, and this is an idea of what it would look like on the site. And that's it. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will
Thank
step
you.
back.
This item is also advertised as a public hearing, so we will open it up to the public. Anyone from the public would like to come up and make comment, please step up to the podium, state your name and address, and please address the board with your comments. So at this time, if you'd like to make comment, please step up to the podium. It does not look like there is any public comment, so we will close that and bring it back to the board for discussion. Would you be able to bring up that rendering again?
Sure.
So there's separation in all the clusters of buildings. On the plan, it appeared some of them were kind of continuous. Is that the plan, or?
So, yes, I apologize for the spacing. The plan is to keep them all connected since they will be sprinkled.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
that there will not be any spaces between the clusters.
Different
So,
units, yeah.
basically, these two spaces here, we would like to eliminate and just have these 10 units be continuous. And then all of these would be continuous to each other.
I guess I would have on the appearance, I don't remember from the code, does this require multiple materials in this zone? I can't remember.
Not in this zoning district.
Not in this zone, okay. And the comment on the gated access, that's not an issue, is it?
No, with the
emergency.
Knox box, and yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Okay.
They're aware that they have to supply access for the emergency vehicles.
And on the sprinklers, do you have provisions for outdoor access?
Yes, there'll be, as we were discussing this, there'll be a 6-foot break in the middle or the ends of each cluster, and that will be a utility corridor, and that will have the sprinkler access, and there'll be an outdoor connection from that corridor
Okay.
to meet code. Yeah.
All right. One of the other questions I had, the parking. Are you going to stick with 36, or any way you could fit 42, or is that are we going to have to think about?
So, yeah, we could probably technically show some lines to get to 42 if the board would like us to. Otherwise, we don't feel that they're needed because each spot is a garage, and they can, the thought is that they can park outside of their garage doors. They're using it even if it's full of toys. So, and during the staff review meeting, there was some discussion about actually using on-street parking if needed, but it's going to be very, very rare that this site's going to see more than 40 cars at one time.
That seems to make sense.
Yep.
So we would have to do a waiver for that to go against the technical code, I think.
True.
Right, okay. So we would have to do a waiver for that. And would they have to ask for that?
Yes.
Or would
We
we
actually
just?
do have a waiver form for people to fill out, so they tell us exactly what section and chapter
Okay.
they want the waiver from.
So if
Okay.
you want to stick with the 36, just fill out that waiver form.
Okay, with that, okay, what are if we were to say that we would agree to put the 42 on there, is there a chance that this could be just put on in a consent approval, or are we talking about another meeting for
You
a
mean
vote?
having to extend your time because of that?
Right.
Would we be able to handle the waiver tonight, or is that something you have to fill out that form?
Give us a second, we'll find the chapter
All right.
and verse.
We'll figure that out.
Okay, thank you.
In the meantime, any questions from the board?
I do, sorry. David Burrows. The rendering shows a lot of trees. Is that realistic? Are you going to be able to preserve as many trees that this rendering shows?
I think it's being a little generous in the middle with trees, because we do have to grade. We do have to grade to make that all work, so.
How about around the exterior?
Around the exterior, I do believe that we're going to be able to leave a good, at least 30 feet to 50 feet
Well
around.
screened from outside the site.
Right, yeah, it'll be well screened. We'll be leaving 30 feet of existing trees, and this is the power line side, so I know the power line is cleared pretty much probably up to the line. So that would probably be the thinnest area, but this will all remain natural. We won't be touching the frontage, and then this would all remain natural on this side, and that's a good 30, 60 feet there.
Good, thanks.
Mr. Jim, you mentioned that you're not going to have the floor drains and that you decided against them. So are your customers, your owners, I guess, are they allowed to wash a vehicle? Is there a place where they could wash it?
We don't have a kind of any containment pad or anything like that proposed for washing.
Okay. So it will be prohibited, you will prohibit your owners from washing, because otherwise it's going to go in the stormwater system.
Right.
Jim?
Thank you. Well, so there'll be no hose bibs, no backflow preventers to worry about any of this water washing a vehicle down, or just simple maintenance?
Right.
No hose bibs, no backflow preventers to worry about that?
Right. Right.
Because we're on public water.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
I would point out there's a car wash down the street, self-serve, 2 bays, so they can go there.
There we go.
I guess my question is, how will that be enforced? I mean,
Will they have water in their garage unit?
We'll have standard condo docks. The condo docks will stipulate the rules and regulations. Yeah, I mean, there won't be anybody there policing it, but yeah, they'll have to sign the condo docs. There will be a homeowners association, a president, and if they get caught, I'm sure there'll be fines, but that's, how we'll police it. That's where we're probably going to police it. So just signing the condo docs and having to abide by the laws of the HOA.
I guess, excuse me, I think the question was asked, will there be spigots that someone could connect to? All right.
No.
Very good.
That's
The water services will service the kitchenette and the bathroom, so there'll be faucets in a sink.
I just know that people who have pretty cars like to keep them pretty.
Yes. Then, like he said, they can support the local car wash businesses.
Good.
Do we have a determination?
The board has two choices. You can grant a waiver from Chapter 2, Section 2-2A2, which is the off-street parking standards, or you can make a finding under the same chapter, Section 2-2A8, which says the planning board may reduce the off-street requirements of the previous section where it is clearly demonstrated that the parking demand will be lower than that established by this section, and that the reduction will not detract from neighborhood property values, inconvenience the public, or increase congestion on adjacent streets. So one is a waiver and one is a determination. It would be up to you.
Personally, I think the determination applies. We don't really need the waiver if we go with the determination.
Yeah, that seems to make sense to me. Any other?
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would someone like to, yes, Jim?
Sorry, I have some questions if you don't mind. Thank
yeah.
you. So anything that's highlighted in yellow, we're still waiting for those documents, et cetera. So are there no conditions based on that?
No, sometimes it's an outstanding thing, like the water from the Portland Water District, that
Sure.
letter. Some things are just outstanding, and we
Well,
wait for them as staff and collect them in your stead and make sure that it actually gets done.
Trip generation memorandum, for example, is highlighted, it hasn't been.
They would give to us. We would
Correct,
make sure
correct.
that they comply to the ordinance through the use of our peer review engineer and our town engineer.
Understood. Page 14, for example, there are several items. I'm just trying to be cautious here. Attended to that. So a determination, should that have some limitations in it based on the highlighted areas that we're still waiting for information? Slow down the process,
No,
but I see there's some holes here, perhaps.
there's some outstanding things. They should provide proposed driveway or street that complies with that -2%
Yep, yep.
grade. So they would redo the plan, and that would be redone to comply with the ordinance. Unless the board granted a waiver of some sort based on your peer review engineer or your town engineer's comment, that can be done or should be done, which we don't have this evening for you. The pedestrian circulation, there are no sidewalks on Old Canal Way, and so therefore, they haven't provided any into the site or along the frontage. It's one of those, they should request a waiver from this section based on the fact that there aren't any sidewalks in this development at all, or along Mosher Road where it takes access from.
So you just confused me because I'm confused now. So now they have to apply for another waiver? Is that what you're saying? Because that's not what it says. It doesn't say that in the notes. Like a waiver is required from the applicant to meet this requirement.
They should ask for a waiver if they want one.
And just like the previous question, there's no determination that we can make now to move that along. As for example, we just had the same question about the parking spaces, and there's a determination that we can make at this point to move this process along. Can we do the same thing with the sidewalks, or not?
In this situation, you could. I wouldn't say that everywhere in town you could do the same thing, but there's no sidewalks on Mosher Road. There are no sidewalks within this development.
And there's
so
not planned to be.
They didn't plan on
Right.
providing anything.
Yes, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm ready to send this to a consent agenda with contingencies, if that's possible. I mean, I want to see these waivers. If there's suggestions that they should apply for a waiver, I want to see these things buttoned up. Everything else, we have some renderings here, and it's pretty clear, but there are a couple of holes here for me. So I don't know if that means we don't send it to a consent agenda contingent upon getting these waivers.
It would be difficult to put this on the consent agenda because you would have to vote on the waivers. So
Right.
tabling is it's probably the best option. It would be a short conversation, probably, so that you could grant some waivers as requested.
Yes, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Motion to table this item until the waivers, as requested or mutually agreed upon, are submitted.
All right. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Favor? Looks like there's 6 in favor.
Yes.
Okay.
Is there an abstention or something?
One opposed.
One opposed, okay.
All right. Thank you.
That brings us to item 3, which is a discussion, Land Use and Development Code Amendment, LD 2003. Proposed amendment to the Land Use and Development Code to allow for unit bonuses for affordable housing in the town's growth areas as required by MRSA 30-A 4364, also known as LD 2003. And may we have some background from planning, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So some of you may be familiar with LD 2003, but just I'll do a brief overview for the board. So that was a state law that was a mandate that was put in place in 2022, and it required several preemptions of local zoning with the goal to create more housing units, and in particular, affordable housing units in the state. So it required a few things, some of which we've already actually got in place in Gorham. The first of which is to permit accessory dwelling units on basically all residential single-family home properties. Detached or attached, and as you recall, that was put into place by the town a little over a year ago. The other major set of requirements is broad upzoning. So in the growth area of the town, which is essentially all of the areas that are not considered rural, at least 4 units of housing have to be allowed. However, density and dimensional requirements like setbacks still have to be, can still be put into place. And at least 2 units need to be allowed in the rural zone. Gorham meets this requirement, and then some actually, because Gorham allows multifamily housing in all of its residential zones. So it actually goes considerably farther than many other communities in the region toward meeting that requirement. So nothing needed to be changed to meet that. And the final provision, which is still outstanding, which the town does need to put into place, is this 2.5 density bonus for certain affordable housing developments. So those are developments which would include at least 51% affordable units, and that's defined in a table here. It's based on family size. So for rental units, that has to be 80% of area median income. For a family of 4, that's $94,600 a year. And for ownership units, that's 120% of area median income, which is, for a family of 4, $141,950 a year. So that's what's before you tonight. What needs to be looked at. There's a recommendation that's come to you from the town council, which has, as you can see from the tracking table, looked at this on several different occasions. So we'd be looking for the board to do, our recommendation on the staff level is to send this to the ordinance committee, and we did prepare a motion if you'd like to do that. And I'll mention that this motion could be used for items 3, 4, and 5. We normally do put these in the staff memos, but we do have it separately tonight to assist you if you want to make any of those motions. And with that, we could send it back to the board, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it seems like there's a bit here to look at. I think maybe the question is the order. Do we go to a public hearing first and then bring it to a committee to discuss? Or do we go right to a committee to discuss? What does the board think? Yes, Jim.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have the public hearing.
It's kind of what I was thinking.
Give the opportunity for people to digest this, read it, try and come back.
That was my thought as well. Anyone else?
I'd agree.
If there's no resistance to that, or if we all generally agree, maybe you can just make a motion and move this along, or? Yes, Bill.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to send the proposed amendment to the Land Use and Development Code to the next available planning board meeting for a public hearing.
Do you want to go right to that committee, or do you want to do public hearing first?
Sorry, no, for a public hearing.
First, yeah, okay. And is there a...
The amendment to the Land Use and Development Code.
Yep.
To the planning board for a public hearing.
Yep. Is there a second?
Second.
David, all in favor? Looks like all 7 in favor, 7-0. That brings us to another, that's item 4. Discussion, Land Use and Development Code Amendment, floodplain. Proposed amendment to the Land Use and Development Code to remain in compliance with the National Flood Insurance Program. If we could have planning background on that one?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Cumberland County has been trying to review and update its floodplain maps for approximately 12 years. A number of the communities wanted the maps reviewed and have worked toward that goal for at least a decade. Those communities and the county and the FEMA agency have come to an agreement on the maps, and so they are issuing a statement that says you must upgrade your floodplain management ordinances to adopt the maps by June of this year, June 20th to be exact, or you will be suspended from the National Floodplain Insurance Program. So Our ordinance was a little bit behind. I noticed there were a couple of amendments in the last 10 years as we moved through this process. And so what we've done is created a draft ordinance that shows you all of the every change that they've done in the last 10 years. And with that, I turn it over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Kind of seems like the last one, there's a bit here to take a look at. I can't remember, is this perhaps something we might want to get public comment as well? What does the board think on this one? Kind of the same idea? Yes, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Carolyn, if I may. So can I assume the language, much of it, a lot of red, if we went to other local cities and towns, perhaps throughout the state, it's going to be similar language, where everyone's on the same page, we're not deviating just because we're Gorham or anything else like that. This is all
Cumberland
FEMA.
County.
Cumberland County.
Cumberland County, yes. The one thing that Gorham has that is different from a number of different towns is that we do not allow new development in the floodplain. It's a policy, it's been in our ordinance. There's a couple of sections in here that we need to tweak to galvanize that further. So even this document is not the final version. Even when you look at it, it will change a little bit. I've been going back and forth with the woman who gave us the guideline document, and she's making recommendations for further tweaks. So we'll go through that process a little bit more for a little bit more changes. But that's the one thing that we have that's quite different from some communities.
So we're more stringent
We are,
in some areas.
yeah.
And I heard you say June 20th?
June
is that
20th, yes.
So there's a preponderance that we should move along, but my personal opinion is I'd like to have a public hearing. Again, let the community.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, David.
So my question is about the timeline. If we do take it to a public hearing, Carol, is there enough time with the process that has to occur? Does this need to go back to the town council? And is there enough time to get it through if we follow our typical route, take it to a public hearing?
Yes, but it would be tight because you'd have to hold another public hearing, you'd have to workshop it, hold another public hearing, then the town council has to hold their public hearing to adopt it. So it's tight. Is it doable? Yes.
Well, let me ask another question. Excuse me, Bill. We get it in there with most of the changes that are recommended by staff, which I know has gone through a pretty thorough analysis. We can always, if there's something we missed, we can always come back and get it later, but we don't want to put the whole system at risk.
No, we do not.
Yeah. So
That would be horrible.
So if we try to get it done on an expedited basis and we miss something, we can always tweak it afterwards, can't we?
Yes.
All right.
The major goal of this is to adopt those new maps.
Is there anything material in all this language that changes? If we adopted this tonight, I'm not saying that we should. If we adopted it tonight, how would it change things for anybody who is doing development or out in the community tomorrow? Is there anything that changes materially for people?
No, because you can't develop in a floodplain now.
Anyway, right. That's why I'm asking.
Right.
So there's nothing that we would pass in this that would really change anything from the way it exists now.
The maps
The maps are
changed.
different, yes, but
Yes.
we don't have a say in how the maps are drawn. We're just adopting
did.
them or we're not.
We did. We agreed to it a long time ago.
This committee has no say in how the maps are drawn.
That's true.
Yes. Okay.
Would it be possible for there to be a workshop before the April meeting and have the public hearing that night and take potential public comment and get it buttoned up that night? Any chance that could happen?
Certainly.
What does everyone think of that? I won't be here, but for you guys.
Can we look at a date? Are we saying the 18th, March 18th?
I think it would
Is there enough legal time in there to have a public notice?
April, the first Monday, the April meeting.
Well, the council's got to have a public hearing as well, correct? So we send it to the council, and then they announce public hearing after that? Again, the timeline's sensitive.
So theirs would it be in May if it went on that timeline? Town council? Be the month after April?
I have to look at a calendar when they're meeting.
That seems better than going to public hearing in April and then a workshop in May. You know, that's really stretching it out.
Not gonna work.
Yeah, I guess the question is whether we have, for us, we have a workshop before, or we just do it an hour before the public hearing, or we want to do it 2 weeks before the public hearing.
I mean, time is of the essence, right? So we need, I don't mean to speak out of turn. March 18th did I miss something? Is that not possible?
I don't know.
It's up to the board.
I mean, I want to make sure that we do our job and give it its due diligence and not affect the tail end.
Yep. You can, it's your meeting. You can have that second meeting if you want, certainly.
I won't be here on the 18th, so
Yeah.
I'm out of town.
We'll be down 2 people, but we'll have an odd number.
I won't be here either.
Yeah.
18th?
And I'm questionable, so.
Well, then the 3 of us will have to,
You need 4.
Yeah, need a quorum.
can we,
Well, if it's a workshop, right, you're not voting on the,
If you want to do a workshop on the 18th, that's doable with 4.
we won't have 4, will we?
3.
Mr. Walsh is not here, we won't have 4.
Yeah. I'm a question mark on that date.
What about March 25th?
Why don't we just do it right before if we're gonna come in and talk about it and then take it in public hearing, it's gonna be, hot in their mind.
Yeah, if we
Yeah.
have to go to public hearing anyway, I
Yeah.
don't think the day you have it before the public hearing really doesn't matter, because
Right.
you're gonna have the public hearing April, right?
April
Because
1st.
of that, yeah.
You can't tweak the language on the same night, though, if you workshop it.
Oh.
You can't tweak the language for the public hearing.
Right.
You'll be workshopping the language that you're
Ah.
looking at that evening anyway, so
Yeah.
you can't change it that night.
Right, okay. No, let's go with the 18th and see I'll look at my schedule.
You wanna try to do the 18th? How many would we have here on the 18th? I would be here.
I mean, can we not call a special meeting? There's enough time on the agenda for us to call a special meeting to expedite this.
You're the board, you can do what you want. As long as this room's available, or the workshop room's available, you can meet.
So the 18th, we do have 4 available for a workshop? Yeah, okay, well, let's do it, I think the 18th then. We have to take a vote on that, or?
Yes, please.
Someone want to make a motion to have a workshop on the 18th?
a workshop and a public hearing?
I don't think we can do the public hearing that night because we can't, we can't
You
modify
can't
the language.
change anything.
Yeah, we can't modify the language and have a public hearing. So we could have our workshop, modify the language as we see fit, and then have a public hearing April,
April 1st.
the April meeting.
My hopes were to get a public hearing and get input, feedback from the community, and then edit what we need to.
That would be ideal, so you.
But do the public hearing on the 18th.
You want to have a meeting and have the public hearing that night.
Correct.
That makes sense, okay. All right.
But if we don't have a majority, then I was asking, can we have a special meeting on March 25th,
Right.
where we would have a majority?
I think we can, so we think the 18th is not good, it seems like, I gather. So do we want to just go ahead and make a motion for the 25th, the week after? Yes, Jim?
Mr. Chairman, my motion is that we have a public hearing on Monday evening, March 25th, to address the floodplain land use and development code amendment.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Second, David, all in favor? Looks like 7-0. All right, thank you. So we will have that
Time on the 25th?
7 PM, I assume? Yeah, 7 PM. All right. That makes sense. So that will bring us to item 5, which is another discussion, Land Use and Development Code Amendment, zoning map amendment. Proposed amendment to the Land Use and Development Code to rezone lots on Preble Street from urban residential to office residential. And if we could have planning background, please.
The town council has proposed implementation of the comprehensive plan section that calls from changing the Preble Street, or some of the Preble Street zoning from urban residential to office residential. And the standards and map you have in your packet that show you the proposed rezoning parcels from South Street to about 3/4 down through those parcels on the way to Elm Street, if you can picture that in your head.
Yes, Bill.
Can you please describe the difference between what urban residential and office residential are?
The urban residential zoning district allows for, I'm going to say predominantly residential zoning. So mostly housing, home occupations, very limited commercial opportunity. The office residential allows for more office-based things, professional offices,
Including
lawyers,
dual use?
dentists, kind of thing.
Or you could
Yes.
have an office in the bottom
Mixed-use
floor?
kind of idea,
Right,
yes.
okay.
Yep.
Again, you know, we want to probably have public comment on this. What do we want to do? Again, get public comment first and then go to a committee?
I think it should just go to public hearing.
Go right to public hearing?
Yeah. It's
Yes.
not,
Mr. Chairman, I agree. I'd like to have the Gorham Village Alliance weigh in on this, make sure they're familiar with it. I understand Preble Street, the corner of Preble Street and South Street. There were other ideas for the little park, but by all means, I agree with Mr. Walsh.
All right, thank you. If everyone agrees, does anyone want to make a motion? Yes, Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to send the proposed zoning map amendment for rezone along Preble Street to Office Residential District to the next available planning board meeting for a public hearing.
And is there a second?
I second it.
David, and all in favor? Looks like 7-0. Brings us to item 6, which is a discussion, site plan and subdivision pre-application, Troiano Properties LLC, the residences at Gorham Country Club, a request for approval to construct a mixed-use development on McClellan Road, map 7, lot 18, zoned SGXR. The applicant is represented by Dan Riley, PE with Sebago Technics. And if we could have background from planning, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. This is the first time this application has been in front of the planning board for review. The site is approximately 38 acres of rolling terrain, and the location of the former golf course. There's a mix of canopy trees and understory, as well as a man-made pond on site, on the parcel. The comprehensive plan calls for the entirety of the parcel to be included in the South Gorham Crossroads zone. And in fact, it is. We made that zoning change and map amendment last year, and added in the South Gorham Crossroads zoning district. The master site development plan is required for sites larger than 5 acres, which they've put together and you have in front of you for review. The master plan approval is requested at this step in the overall review and approval process. The board should determine if the criteria for master plan approval have been met during a subsequent review. Specifically, whether the master plan layout as shown will ultimately allow for pedestrian and block standards within the zoning ordinance performance standards. And I call those out because most of the things that are within the performance standards in the zoning district section have been met, or the spirit of it has been met, and they are headed that way. But there are some things that are required during the, I'm going to call it site plan review, where we need more information in order to determine if the master plan complies because of these two things, the pedestrian and the block standards. So they want to take a closer look at those standards to make sure that the master plan can be approved. The town's growth management ordinance currently caps the number of permits per common scheme of development at 10. The applicant is requesting that the planning board finds that the development qualifies as mixed use and thus would be exempt from the growth management ordinance under that Section 6 exemption. And I'll come back to that in a second. The residential gross floor area shall be at least 50% of the total gross floor area of a mixed-use structure, or at least 60% of the gross floor area as part of a mixed-use development. So the applicant should provide the calculation so we can make sure that that has been met. The site is not served by public water and sewer utilities currently, so the applicant is proposing to extend public water 5,500 linear feet as part of Phase 1 and public sewer as part of Phase 2. Prior to running the public sewer, the applicant is seeking to do a cluster septic system, which is not allowed presently. So they're seeking an amendment to the ordinance to allow this, and they have started conversation with the town council in order to request that amendment. For traffic movement, they will need to do a traffic permit and movement review, and that'll come as they get further along in the process. The town attorney has recommended that a commercial lot be included in Phase 1 to meet the growth management ordinance requirement, and that's what I said I was coming back to. So with that, I turn it over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And now we will give an opportunity to the applicant to speak.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dan Riley. I'm an engineer with Sebago Technics, and I am here with Troiano Properties, who is the applicant. Nick Troiano is here to answer questions that you might have of the owner. Thanks, Carol, for your input there, and thanks to the staff for the time they've spent with us as we've been working through a number of different scenarios here for the development of the land. As mentioned in your memo, the property is a portion of the former Gorham Country Club site. It's identified as map 7, lot 18. It's a property that's located on McClellan Road with about 1,950 linear feet of frontage on McClellan Road along the south side. I don't know if anyone can see the, there we go. So with about 1,950 linear feet of frontage along McClellan Road, and we're located about 350 feet to the west of the intersection of Brackett Road. So it's one of the portions of the former country club. The area highlighted in red along the north curving boundary across the top of the site is the right-of-way that the main turnpike has acquired for the future turnpike extension. And as Carol said, the property does occupy about 38 acres. And the applicant is proposing a mixed-use project that's going to be combination of multifamily residential, both townhouse and apartment units, and a commercial component. The development program really has been put together for the purpose of meeting some of the goals of the South Gorham Crossroads District, which in the comprehensive plan and the ordinance calls for an area of mixed-use development with higher residential densities. And as many of you know, the challenges to providing that kind of density that was looked for when the zone was created are a couple of things. First, the extension of public sewer and water and the expense associated with that. Currently, both sewer and water are about 2 miles away from the site. Another project that's before the board would extend water a portion of the way, but that still leaves a little over a mile of water to be extended to the site. Along with that and the costs associated with it is the extension of sewer, which is a similar distance, and we have some graphics there of where some of that's located we can get to in a minute. The other challenges to this are certain provisions of a couple of ordinances as they stand in the city, in the town. One of which is the septic ordinance, which currently doesn't allow clustered septic systems. So under the current ordinance, any development like this or a mixed-use development with multifamily residential buildings would be required to have a septic tank for each unit and a septic field for each building. A septic tank for the townhouse styles units, and then and a field for each building, and a separate septic field for each building in the development. And when you start looking at the land requirements for that and the setbacks requirements, it really makes it difficult to achieve any kind of higher density residential that the district looks for. And so we've proposed, based on some ordinances other communities have adopted and have written a draft edit to the town's septic ordinance that would allow clustered systems, whereby more than one building could be served by a single septic system. In that, some of the provisions in that, what we've proposed include creating an association that's responsible for the maintenance of that system and some other financial guarantees that would allow a cluster system to be managed over time. We've got a counselor that's been willing to support that or propose it to take it through to the council. We're hoping that in the springtime, that'll be taken up by the ordinance committee and considered. So that's sort of the first piece that needs to fall in place for really any development of any kind of residential density in this zone until public sewer can be extended. with that in mind, so the applicant has developed a development program, both in terms of the scale of the development, the massing, and the timing of that development in order to be able to extend public water to the site during the first phase of the development, and then build out the first phase of the development as a mixed-use project under the exemptions that would allow more than 10 building permits in a given year. And that would allow the first phase of the project to be built, water to be extended to the site, and that would provide the financial basis for the next phase, which would allow sewer to be brought to the site as part of the commercial development. So as I go through this, that's sort of an important piece of this, and it's the reason we're coming forward for a master plan now, because we think that getting a preliminary approval that the master plan constitutes gives us standing to talk to the council about their decision on the growth management exemption, and we certainly wouldn't want to go to the council before we brought a plan of this scale before you for your input. So the reason we're here today is for sketch plan approval for the master plan, which we would ultimately be seeking approval from you. To get into a few of the details, to talk a little bit about how the development is anticipated to move forward. The first phase of the project are the areas highlighted here in the screen. I don't know if you can see my pointer on the screen here. Oh, sorry. That's what the buildings are going to look like. Sorry, I just changed pages here. There we go. So the buildings highlighted in yellow here at the west end of the site is the program which is anticipated the first phase. It would be 57 townhouse units with about 1,800 square foot apiece, with parking in front in a driveway and a garage space. They would be built out in 3, 4, and 5-plex attached units with some associated access driveways and parking. As part of that first development, the public water would be extended to the site, and that development and all the following phases would be served by public water. Our proposal that we talked about with that phase of the project would be served with a cluster septic field likely located in this portion of the site at the west end. It's where the soils are most suitable for that, and it's where we believe it puts the septic system in a place where the townhouse development could be constructed, could operate on its septic system for most of the expected lifetime of that system, and then be connected to the public sewer when it comes in phase 2 and as it's then extended across the site in some of the follow-on phases. So the first phase of the project at the west end, townhouse development, 57 units. Phase 2 of the project is proposed as a commercial development at the southeast corner of the site, adjacent to Brackett Road, or closest to Brackett Road. And as you see in the master plan, and as we stated in our application, there's no defined use for that yet. It would be a commercial use that's allowed in the zone. But from a space planning standpoint at that portion of the site, what we've presented and laid out would be two units of about 5,000 square feet each for a total. And we've laid out the site to allow for potentially something as space demanding as a gas station with a drive-through car wash potentially attached, and a commercial space that could be any of the allowed uses really in the zone, but supporting something like a bank or a food operation that would have a drive-through. So we did that not because we have a tenant in mind, but we wanted the master plan to reflect the space requirements of that kind of use in terms of circulation and parking. So phase 1 is the townhouse unit at the west end. Phase 2 would be a commercial development at the east end of the site. Phase 3 would be 90 apartment units in 15-unit buildings, so in 6 15-unit buildings sort of at the center of the site. Those would be connected to the sewer that's brought and serving the site as part of phase 2. Phase 4 would be a follow-on phase of commercial development at the northeast corner of the site here, highlighted in purple. Again, uses aren't defined, but we're planning for 15,000 square feet of commercial space, and again, with some space for potentially a drive-through bank or some sort of operation that would require drive-through circulation. Public sewer would be extended into that phase, as it came in from phase 1. Phase 4 would be a follow-on, phase 5 would be a follow-on second apartment complex phase. 5 units, 75 apartment units in the center of the site, followed by Phase 6, which would be a final 60 units of apartments, again, in the same 15-unit buildings at the north end of the site. And along with that would come some amenity space that's planned for the apartment development, including a clubhouse with a pool and some other amenities that come with that. All of that development from Phase 2 on would be connected to the public sewer that would be brought in as part of that phase. And as the sewer is extended across the site and the phases are built out between phases 3, 5, and 6, at that point, sewer will be fully brought into the site and the septic system can then be retired and the Phase 1 project connected to the public sewer that would be in place at that time. Talking a little bit about that, staff in our meeting last week asked that we talk a little bit about where that sewer may come from. And what you see here on the sketch is our project site is located here at the lower left-hand corner. The boundary between Gorham and Scarborough is located here with Payne Road across the bottom, and the boundary between Gorham and Westbrook. So currently, public water exists north of the site, coming down from the center of near the center of town, running some distance through the recently approved project to the vicinity, of Newtown Drive. So one option to bring water in would be to extend, if that extension is in fact built, we would be extending about a little bit under 6,000 square feet to bring water to the center of the site. If that project were not constructed, we would be 8,000 or 9,000 feet away from the water in that same direction. And so there's another option to bring water in down through Saco Street from Westbrook where it terminates here. Similarly, in red are sort of the routes that the sewer might take. We haven't designed that sewer. It would probably be a combination of gravity sewer and potentially a pump station given the lay of the land. But one of the two routes where it's available for potential connection would be following those same routes. So that's sort of the overall layout of the program. And what we wanted to do was to lay out for you, and certainly Nick can speak more to this if you have questions, about what the development program is and the needs that he's evaluated and determined in order to have the project be financeable and be constructible. It's not only the scale of the development and the number of units, but the sequence matters as well. And really the plan around that is to be able to extend that public water in the first phase. We are going to be asking that the board and the council determine that this is a mixed-use development based on what the ordinance definitions are. And that would allow that first phase to be built out over the course of 2 or 3 years instead of the 6+ years that it would take under the current growth management ordinance. And that's really just intended to be able to recoup the cost of extending the water and put the project in a position to be able to extend the sewer in the follow-on phase. So the phasing of that's important. So those two things are really the impetus behind coming to at this stage in the project to give you an overview of what the plan looks like, to explain why we've sort of phased it in terms of both building program and timing to allow those things to happen. Understanding that there are some certain threshold questions that need to be answered, one being the clustered sewer provisions that are in process with the council, and then a finding that this is a mixed-use development and qualifying for the exemption of the growth permit, so that the first phase townhouses can be built, but also so that the apartments can be developed. As I'm sure the board's aware, the current growth management ordinance is really geared towards trying to control and manage the growth of single-family residential properties is kind of the way it was written. Those sorts of developments that have a relatively higher impact on schools and other public services. It makes it particularly difficult to develop more dense multifamily residential, particularly apartments, because there's no provision in the current ordinance that would allow, say, a 15-unit apartment building that may be necessary for an economically viable and financeable project. It's very difficult to plan that when you may only get 10 building permits or less in a year. And so the real struggle is that a developer of an apartment building or unit of more than 10 units would have to construct the building with a lot of uncertainty around when they could occupy it. And the occupancy of that building really extending out over a number of years becomes a difficult prospect for lending and for other reasons related to that. And that's really the basis of what the development program that the owners put together and why we've laid it out in this way with the phasing. And so with that, I'd be glad to take any questions you might have.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions for planning. So master plan approval, what does that mean? I don't recall ever having to do that on any previous developments.
This is a brand-new section in the zoning ordinance. It has its own performance standards, and master plan approval is one of them.
Okay.
How is that different from the contract zone that we so recently spent so much time talking about?
Contract zone is a completely different animal for a completely different purpose. A master plan shows a plan with every single thing on, in our case, more than 5 acres. So rather than coming in with one townhouse and getting a site plan approval for that, and then an apartment building and get a site plan approval for that, and then in 2 years coming and getting a commercial site plan approval, they have to spell out every single thing they want to do on an entire parcel all at the same time so you can see what it's going to look like at the end of the day. The entire parcel, not one at a time.
Yes, David.
So just piggybacking on that question is say you're saying you do a lot more work up front. We would not see each phase. I'm guessing that each phase would not come back for, say, something like a subdivision review because it's, or would it?
In this case, they have it all on one parcel.
Yeah. So it would not.
Which is interesting. It could if they decided to split it up. They're going to split it up into phases, and we haven't had this conversation yet, but I'm assuming they come in with each phase for approval.
All right.
That's how it's spelled out in the ordinance, so they will be doing that.
But then all right, now I'm confused because I was starting to understand the master plan, and now if it's coming back at each phase. So what?
They get approved for every single thing up front in concept. And then the details get given to you in each phase for approval.
Okay.
Carol, might I speak to that just for a moment? I think I can, that's certainly what our approach is going to be. So in our putting this together, in the site performance standards of the ordinance, specifically in the South Gorham Crossroads, it spells out that any project over 5 acres requires a master site development plan. Mm-hmm. And the requirements of that are actually fairly limited as we read it, and I don't mean to overstep here. But it just says that it must show public and private right-of-ways that are consistent with the road standards, phase delineation showing the extent of site work and development proposed for each phase, areas designated for stormwater control, areas designated for open space and green space, parking sufficient to meet the requirements of the ordinance, and that's all that the ordinance requires in this zone for that. And so we tried to do is be general in that, to lay those things out, and understanding where this is the first time you're seeing this. But our understanding has always been that each one of these phases would come back for individually for its own site plan review as they're developed, because the level of detail that we would do at this point, certainly with some of the uncertainty involved in the overall project, we would want to approach it that way, to design each one in detail as it comes as its own site plan following a master plan approval.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, just going back to Carol, from a process standpoint, what is the process that we, as the planning board, would follow to evaluate and approve the master plan?
You'd receive the plan, and you would make sure that it complies with the standards that he just read. Now, The first standard in this is public and private rights-of-way. So if you look through more in depth the performance standards later on in the same exact section, there is a requirement for blocks as delineated by roads. The blocks may not be larger than 1,600 lineal feet or feet. So I kind of highlighted that in my opening remarks, in that I'm not sure that this complies with that. And so to approve the master plan based on the current road configuration is difficult because it doesn't necessarily meet the 1,600 feet requirement. And then you go down into number 4 in the master plan requirements, and it talks about sidewalks, paths, and greenways. If you go further into the performance standards, it requires the sidewalks to connect to the buildings, which they show sidewalk, and it requires some other things about sidewalks too. So they don't meet all of that, and you need to read the entire ordinance section in order to suss out more detail that needs to be on the master plan. This is how I'm reading it. When you read it all together, they have some things here, and they have enough, but when they get designing this, it's going to show something different than what was on the master plan. My real question is whether they comply with the block requirement. They're very specific standards, and it requires roads going in here, which these don't look like roads to me, they look like driveways. So that's some of my and the staff's concern about that.
All right. So, very detailed answer to my question, but my question was actually a little more general. So I appreciate the detail, but it's in terms of how will we take this through process? In other words, we're seeing this for the first time. All right. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that has to dig through, not only your part and Damon's and everyone, but how is the process here? In other words, you're going to dig through this. We're going to, they said, obviously it's got to go to public hearing, whether it go to workshop meetings, public hearing. Then, I see this as a multi-step process. Is that correct?
You ultimately will make a determination whether their master site plan meets the requirements of this section. Whether you workshop that, hold a public hearing to discuss it, is either or.
Okay. And then, since you've raised these technical points in your detail about the master plan may not kind of fit well into the ordinance, would it be an option for the applicant to take it out of this master plan and seek putting a master plan and go back to a contract zone?
No, they're completely different processes. The contract zone they don't need a contract zone for this. If you find that this is a mixed-use development, they will not need to use contract zoning because they will comply with the ordinance.
Okay.
Contract zoning has been used in a couple of other developments because they couldn't comply with the specific standards of at least one ordinance. In this case, if you find that this is a mixed-use development, it is exempt from the growth management ordinance, which allows them to continue on without a contract zone.
Let's go for it. Thank you.
So how could we not see this as a mixed-use development? Seems obvious that it's a mixed-use development.
It is in that the entire site has some commercial,
Yes.
you know, it's mixed. The town attorney has recommended that each phase, or at least phase one, have a commercial component to it in addition to the residential, so that you can call each phase mixed use. Each phase should have legitimate mixed use in it as you go through this for review.
I thought we were just kind of looking at the master plan right now. So we're trying to decide if the master plan is mixed use, not if each phase is mixed use, because we're not being presented with each phase.
It includes the conversation about the phasing, so that's why it was brought up.
So,
And they want to know whether they're going to need to go through contract zone request.
yes.
Yeah, we have no intention of going through a contract zone process. That's never been application. It's not our requirement. So the reason we're asking for the determination and what we'll eventually, trying to understand the process, we felt that we needed the master plan approval from the planning board in order to go to the council to ask them to make their determination that this is a mixed-use development subject to the exemption. We felt like we needed a pending status, and per the ordinance, the master plan provides that. It's a preliminary approval similar to another, and it gives us some standing. We did see the comment from the town attorney with a recommendation that the commercial development be included in a first phase of development. We don't find that in the ordinance, so we would like to have a discussion about where that recommendation comes from specifically, because the ordinance doesn't state that. The owner and the reason we've tried to be clear about our reasoning that the commercial development would come in the second phase really has to do with the ability to be able to afford to bring the sewer that would be required. Because the project really, as it stands, under the state rules, we have a limited amount of septic capacity that the property can handle based on its size, about 25,000 gallons per day. The applicant's interest here really is the residential development and really the apartments. The first phase residential will use up about 2/3 of that capacity. So there is capacity for the commercial development to use some of the septic capacity and could operate on a septic system, but that's not really desirable and it's not the owner's intent. But the only way that the project can be financially viable to bring the sewer, the mile or 2 miles, public sewer, the mile to the site, is to be able to build the first phase residential as a residential project with the growth managed exemption, understanding that the commercial component is in the second phase. It doesn't mean it can't be built out sooner, but it will be very limited in the uses that could come in there given the septic limitations. And so to try to achieve the goals that the comprehensive plan sets out and the zoning ordinance sets out for this development of mixed uses, that's the path forward that the applicant really has identified they can afford to do, or that can be a financeable project that has a positive pro forma that lenders would consider, is to do it in that sequence. And so we understand and certainly respect the opinion of the town attorney. We'd like to talk about that some more, because our proposal and our request that has to go to the council really needs to be that it is a mixed-use development, understanding that the commercial development comes in the second phase. And that's like a critical threshold question that the applicant has to answer to determine whether the project is even viable. And so that's really, we've tried to be upfront about that right from the start, and that's where our position is on it.
Can you speak to the 1,600-foot block?
We can certainly look at the plan. That wasn't a comment that was in the staff memo, but we can certainly look at that. We laid out the project really as a sketch plan to try to talk about some of these larger issues, and we're certainly going to get into more detail. If We didn't read the ordinance as meaning that you needed roads to create the blocks, and we can certainly do that, though. The plan is conceptual, so we can create more blocks if it just means more pavement, more on-street parking compared to the parking as it's laid out today. It's a little bit different concept, but I think we can address those types of design-related issues as we go forward. But really wanted to get this in front of you to see, you know, the overall concept and the overall program and timing is really what we were most concerned about.
I want to address the commercial and the growth management. Obviously, the town attorney isn't here. Do we know why that comment was made? Do we know the background on that?
No, we'd have to ask her to
Okay.
provide more detail.
Okay, all right. Yes, Russell?
Mr. Chairman, with respect to the mixed use, I see a clubhouse, which you're proposing for Phase 6. It's really right near Phase 1. If this clubhouse included a restaurant of some sort, would that qualify as a commercial and therefore mixed use? That's an attorney question, huh?
Yes, it would.
It would.
If it was a legitimate restaurant, yes.
Yep. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
so, again, process question. When would this come, when will this be subject to public input?
We can put this up for public hearing really at any time in the process. If you want to have a public hearing as it relates to the master plan, you could have them maybe redo it a little, if that's where you're headed, and then hold a public hearing when they bring it back.
I think the sooner the better.
The sooner the better is public comment, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of chatter about this already, so, you know, I know folks probably want to get on the record on this thing early, and we're going to need to hear it.
Might be interest?
I think there will be.
So
What are we doing?
we don't have any motions in our packet this evening.
The discussion.
This is just a pre,
It's just
are we
a
just having a
pre-app
chat?
discussion.
And
Yes.
but the master plan issue is not something we're gonna, or we were, even though they had asked for that, if theoretically, if we were prepared, would we make a determination on that, or is it still just for discussion? Or? So, I don't think we're ready, in my opinion, but.
It's completely up to the board.
Okay, all right, but that would be the type of thing we would actually make a concrete decision on, yeah, all right. Yes, Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in the notes from the planning office, for example, Mr. Norton has some great comments here. I mean, other people have had great comments, great comments by the Conservation Commission, but I don't see that people have had a chance in the planning department and the town engineer to go back and read or respond to these like we have in many other applications. I would like to see these questions answered by the applicant. It would give us a little bit more information. I think a public hearing is prudent, just because of the area. We got that turnpike thing perhaps going on. Yeah, I don't know if you've heard about that.
I have, yeah.
So I'd like to have town staff, if they can, go back and get the answers to the questions that they had. And certainly, I think it'd be nice to have the town attorney suggest why, if there's some caveat there that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Because I would hate to go through this and say, yeah, this is okay, we look at a phase, and then we go 2 phases down, then all of a sudden say, oh, no, we don't think that this should happen over here, but yet we've perhaps said there's blanket approval over here. I'd like us to have more,
I think it's very early to make any decisions on the master plan or anything else at this point. Yes, David.
I have a question for Chuck. Thoughts? What are your thoughts on this whole issue of the septic, the changes for a combined septic?
I appreciate the question. We've talked internally. Staff would be looking to get some outside recommendations from some sewer experts. I know that there's surrounding towns who do allow clustered systems, so we'd want to take a look at their ordinances and make a suggestion to the council on how to move forward if that's the feeling for the town.
Yes, I appreciate the desire, the willingness to eventually connect the sewer. I mean, I think that's an important part of it, right? If we go cluster, but it's only going to be for a few years, and then it's going to be connected to city sewer. So I appreciate the thought and the process that you went through to make that determination.
Yes, Jim. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing I think we need to correct immediately is on page 3 of the application. The assumption, perhaps, this is the proposed extension will occur from the intersection of Shirley Lane and Brackett on a premise that a recently approved project will construct water relocation. Planning board hasn't seen anything about Shirley and Brackett Road, so.
No, that's come before the planning board for review, but it hasn't been approved yet. No. You're correct.
So what I'm saying is this information is misleading.
Should be updated.
Yes, we will update that. We were under the understanding that that project had been approved and was just coming forward with final construction drawings. And we'll revise that, but there are 2 locations where the water can come of about the same distance, but that is a mistake. We were misinformed, or we misunderstood the status of that project, and we'll correct that.
Thank you. And the street on the other side is called Newton Drive. Okay.
Any other comment? Yes, David.
I guess I have one question. Dan, I am not familiar with the applicant, and maybe we get a little background on, or introduction on the applicant.
It's a good idea.
Thank you, Dan. So I am Nick Troiano with Troiano Properties. We also have another business in the area, Troiano Property Services. Our family's also in the waste industry, so the other side of the family. We are getting into development, and we are, very excited to do work in Gorham and work with you guys. And we've done, I think we're going on 8 months now, maybe 9 months, working with Tom and Damon, and we've had a couple meetings with Carol as well. We're trying to make, everything that this project can be for you guys, the town, all its residents, very fitting, and also supply something that you guys don't have, right? You guys don't have affordable housing when it comes to young people, apartments. You don't have that. Your comp plan right now doesn't work for that, and it's years behind where the actual development's going, and you can't build in small numbers anymore and be affordable. You have to build in bulk to make it affordable. So when we come before you guys tonight, and like I said, this is going on 9 months at this point, we really wanted to nail this home, that this is a mixed-use development. We are doing stuff that is actually outside of our, not comfort zone, but outside of our normalcy of what we want to do to try to make it actually more mixed use and give the town something. You guys don't have enough retail. You guys don't have enough daycare area. You don't have enough. There's a lot of things you guys don't have enough of. Housing being one of them. So we see a need in all of that, and we're trying to, one, make it bankable and make our lenders happy in terms of being able to afford public utilities to this area, and also work numbers-wise and work within the parameters you guys set forward. We did a very close job in terms of, reading this zone over. So, as much as we've gone back and forth with Carol on it, it's one of those things where we find that in some cases we overachieved what you guys require. And, it's very interesting because anything can be interpreted multiple different ways. And I know you guys have to do the best you can at judging that, in the 15 minutes we're up here. But it's one of those things where, going on 9 months, we really feel that we achieved a lot of, the parameters that are set forward by you guys in the council, a year ago when they put that writing in place. We're more than willing to answer any questions that, the residents of Gorham have and you guys might have, and we appreciate all your time.
Thank you.
Yeah. If I may, I do appreciate seeing a project that will potentially bring water and sewer down into that section of town. I think it's really, really necessary in that area. Yes.
Yes, Russell.
Having determined that a restaurant in the first phase would qualify for mixed use, if I were a prospective tenant, having a clubhouse, a restaurant, and a pool, it would make the thing more attractive to me.
Any other comments from the board?
What's next? Yeah.
So
I'm having trouble understanding how we get into this.
Would we get responses from the applicant next?
You can go either way. You can hold a public hearing at your next meeting on what you have exactly in front of you with all this information. Or you can allow the applicant a little bit to respond to all the questions and comments in the review memo, present another document, maybe with the same exact plan, and hold a public hearing based on that.
That makes sense to me. Yes, Jim.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I would like to have the questions answered in the review memo, then we digest them, then have a public hearing afterwards.
So
in that order, so that we can see the exchange of information going back and forth without trying to second guess.
Right. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
So
very much.
Is there, do we need a vote to hold a public hearing?
No, but I would ask the applicant is if he has enough information to proceed.
Right. Yes. So after this evening, do you have enough information or any outstanding questions or?
No, yeah, certainly we do. We, like I said, we received the memo just maybe a day before you do, and so we have the comments. We haven't had an opportunity to respond to them yet. We don't. I know the board doesn't generally like to see new information presented on the spur of the moment, so we haven't. I can answer a lot of the questions that are in here if you'd like to hear that, but we're happy to respond to these. We read through them, didn't have any, from what was written here, any real concerns other than what we talked about. One being that there's a recommendation from the city attorney about the commercial use that we don't find in the ordinance, and we just want to understand that a little bit better. We wanted a sense of the board in terms of the overall scheme of the development, the program, and understanding of the timing of it and why we've proposed the sequence that we've proposed. And that if there were any, significant concerns outside of what the staff had put together, we would want to hear those so we can respond to them accordingly when we come before you at a point where you can make a decision.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Have a good evening.
Thanks.
So that leaves us with 4 items. I don't think we're going to get through these. What's that? Yeah, are we in favor of a little break? Jeopardize fitting this in this evening, so we'll take a 5-minute break. Catch you after that.
Thank you.
sure Ben's around.
Yeah. All right, we will return back to the meeting with item 7, which is a discussion, site plan pre-application, Toledo Development Group, dry goods retail store. A request to construct a dry goods retail store and associated infrastructure on the corner of Ossipee Trail and Dingley Springs Road. Map 77, Lot 5, zoned RC, roadside commercial. The applicant is represented by Stephen Haight, PE, with Civil Works New England. And if we could have some background from planning.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. This is the first time this application has come before the planning board. You'll recognize it as a lot shown on another plan that you recently approved. This lot is approximately 2 acres, slightly shy of 2 acres. And it's proposed to be divided off from the larger parcel. Let's see. The property doesn't contain any wetlands on this particular part of the site. And it's not near any significant water body. The parcel where this proposed development is located is in the section of the area flagged as future development parcel on the plan that the self-storage facility was approved for in 2023. It should be noted that this plan has not been signed by the planning board or recorded. All the peer review comments have yet to be complied with under that review as required by those conditions of approval. Additionally, the plan was approved under Patriot Holding, LLC, but the owner of that parcel is now identified as All Purpose Storage Gorham, LLC. This plan that you previously approved will need to be re-reviewed under the new owner, re-signed and recorded. So you'll be signing 2 plans for this, essentially what is the same people, but 2 different entities. The name of the applicant does not match the name on the deed. The right title and interest for the parcel will need to be clarified before the proposal can be further reviewed by the board. So the applicant has submitted paperwork today that shows that and straightens it out so that this applicant can stand before you this evening. The applicant will need to comply with the access management standards in the Land Use and Development Code, Chapter 1, which reads that entrances and uses in this district shall be combined to the maximum extent possible, and developments must allow for pedestrian and vehicle access into lots' driveway. The applicant should be aware that there are specific performance standards for this district, and the one that I mentioned just now is one of those, and there's others that they need to review and comply with, which include not just the access management standards, but building design standards. And so we need an elevation drawing for that review. The land use ordinance standards for retail stores require 1 parking space per 200 square feet of gross floor area. As such, 54 parking spaces should be provided, but the applicant is only providing 36. So the applicant would need to demonstrate that the land use can be accommodated with fewer parking spaces in order to secure a waiver from this requirement from the board. And with that, I turn it over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And now we will hear from the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Carol, Damon, and Chuck. My name is Mark Beaudry. I'm with Civil Works New England. Steve Haight is the, it was named on the record there, but Steve is the president of our firm, but I think as Carol and Damon know, I've done quite a bit of the work on this project, and basically the senior project manager, et cetera. So I'm also a licensed professional engineer here in Maine, so I feel qualified to be before the board tonight and to be able to answer any questions that you might have on the project. So also Jim Cassidy, who you might be familiar with, who is the engineer of record for the developer, had a conflict on a project in Rhode Island tonight, so obviously couldn't be here, but otherwise he would be. He was at the project review meeting last week, so but anyway, Jim has certainly been very accessible to answer any questions that that related to the retailer, to the developer, et cetera. So as Carol pointed out real quick, for the board and members of the public, this was the self-storage plan that was recently approved by the board. And you may recall that there was an out parcel of 1.98 acres at the corner of Ospey Trail and Dingley Spring Road. So that is the actual parcel that is the subject of the review now. And you may recall in the full build plan that was done for this concept, it did show a commercial building in this corner of around a little over 10,000 square feet. The proposed retail store is 10,640 square feet, very consistent. Something that's very important, especially in the in response to in lieu of some of the staff comments that came out recently, is that this plan was approved with a curb cut master plan on Dingley Spring Road, about 100 feet or so from the intersection. So I think that's important to note. Also on the self-storage plan, the development on this property was met that the stormwater systems, in particular Wet Pond 1 and whatnot, were designed to accommodate up to 60% of impervious cover on the out parcel. So the project as we've designed it is 39.1%. So it's actually under the master planned amount. And one of the reasons I wanted to point that out is because obviously we'd have more green space on the property, but also we have enough impervious cover allowance on this property to be able to do more impervious coverage from more parking. The retailer does not need that much parking, and obviously we've all seen, retail plazas, malls, et cetera, that are considerably overparked, and we did not want to go that route just to be able to comply with that provision of the ordinance, especially when there is opportunities in the codes to seek relief from the board if the lower number of parking spaces can be justified, which we will be prepared to do. So this is a sketch plan review, but it's obviously pretty far advanced for a sketch plan. But we had gone pretty far down the road, and we're actually geared towards trying to make a full site plan review submission a couple weeks ago, but everything didn't come together in a timely fashion, such as the building elevation drawings and things like that, which we actually now have. So we've got a pretty detailed sketch plan, but I think it's good for kind of showing a lot of the detail. I think it helped with a lot of the staff reviews and whatnot. So again, here's the property. It's got 295 feet of frontage on Ospey Trail, 295 feet of frontage on Dingley Spring Road. Here you can see the part of the self-storage project with the access driveway that was proposed and approved. And we are proposing the driveway location for this building in the exact location that the master plan driveway curb cut was shown. So the building, of course, everything complies with setbacks. And from a utility standpoint, real quick, especially after the last presentation about water and sewer, water is about 5,000 feet to the northwest in Standish, actually. So after we checked with the Portland Water District, excuse me, I think you went through with the self-storage project, a lot of the discussion back and forth about water sewer. That project is proposing on-site water supply wells and on-site septic. And we are doing the same for this project. We've got our water supply well here and our proposed septic at this location that we've already done all the soil testing for and whatnot. So it can certainly support the use, which is a pretty low flow generator, actually. So you can see the main block of parking is on this part of the site along Ospey Trail with plenty of green space in between. We do have some parking on the Dingley Spring Road side, as well as the service area, loading area with off-street loading, I should say. And so one thing, a couple things that were important that came out of the, staff review and whatnot were, one thing that I can touch on briefly, I think, was the need to have 400 feet between driveways. The way I read the ordinance, the way it's written for the roadside commercial district would be required if the driveways were coming out onto Ossipee Trail or Main Street, is the way I read it. So I don't read the ordinance to see that the 400-foot requirement applies to driveways on Dingley Spring. Obviously, we're not 400 feet apart from the approved driveway for the self-storage facility and the retail store. So as far as combining, I get that, I understand it, but the developer and the retailer, who they don't have a lease signed yet, so they're not in a position where they can disclose who the retailer is, but they expect that to happen fairly soon, and we'd be able to make that announcement. But the retailer, frankly, needs to be able to control their driveway, and if they came off another driveway, for example, the self-storage, they feel that they would not have that under their control. Traffic would come into the retail store basically in the back, which I don't know, the developer, the retailer were just not excited about that prospect. They just don't feel it's a practical solution for this use. So we would hope that the board would agree with that and allow the two separate driveways, especially considering that one was already kind of master planned as part of the self-storage. So frankly, we thought that was kind of a done deal coming in. So anyway, so there's that. I think we talked about the parking briefly. For lot layout, I know the standards of the roadside commercial district say that the front of the store should face the secondary road or the lower classification road, where obviously the driveway is preferred, and that we get that as proposed instead of coming out onto Ospey Trail. But what is a little hard for us to get our head around, to be honest, is that if the driveway was allowed to come out onto Ospey Trail Road because for some reason it was not a safe condition or whatever on Dingley Spring, then the front of the store could then face Ospey Trail. So we really don't fully understand that distinction. And, frankly, when I read the ordinance and all the definitions of the code, they don't define what front of store means or front of building means. So I don't know, I guess it's kind of subjective. But just real quick, from a building design standpoint, we will have the three different materials, and it's actually a quite attractive building, what I just saw a couple days ago. So, but they would like the front of the store, or I should take that back, the main entrance to the store on the Ospey Trail side, because obviously the retailer would like to, and the developer would like to have a visual access of the building to the to Ospey Trail, just like every other commercial building, I think, along that highway does. So we'd just like to be consistent with that. We understand, for traffic purposes, to get the in and out, access egress off of Ospey Trail. We understand that. And, but we would like the main entrance, which is clearly visible to people coming into the retail store that may not be familiar with it, to know where to go. And also, if we did something like, maybe a door on the Dingley Springs side, or possibly a corner entrance, that would require the loading configuration to be reworked, which frankly is going to increase the amount of impervious cover on the property. So anyway, we actually think this was the way it was designed. It was consistent with the master plan, on the self-storage facility, but also is kind of a win-win for the town, for maximizing green space, minimizing impervious, having the driveway entrance off Ospey Trail, and it's more green space especially around the roadways. We just think it's a good thing. So hopefully we would hope that the board would agree when, but we are looking for feedback from the board, and we're a little reluctant to charge down the road with this plan and go to full site plan review if the board is going to have issues with it. So I guess we'd like to know that now. And so, well, I guess that's, obviously, we're going to need to work out, the signage and things like that. So we'll be getting that taken care of. We'll have a landscape plan stamped by a landscape architect. We're anticipating at this point having the same LA involved that was involved in the self-storage project, so who's familiar with the property already and whatnot. So one thing that did come up in the staff review was the questioning the sidewalk connection out to Dingley Spring, and because there is no sidewalks on Dingley Spring Road or on Ospey Trail, I don't think, at this point, why do it? Well, I don't know, people walking down the road, whatever, instead of walking in, through the landscape areas or down the driveway, give them an opportunity to at least come off the, if they're walking down the roadside without going down the driveway. So just kind of thinking, and then maybe it's, that way it's master planned for if sidewalks do come along. So, that was our thinking on that. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and as I said, I would love to, we would welcome any feedback that the board might have before we get too much further along here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the thorough explanation. What does the board think about the access management, 2 separate entrances? Yes, David.
And we kicked that around when we did the self-storage. So I kind of look at it, we kind of laid the groundwork that we would end up with this. At least that was my understanding at that time. I don't know what everyone else thinks, but I know we talked about would there be an entrance off the self-storage driveway at that time, and I think it was concluded at that time, if I recall, no.
If I may.
Yes.
Mr. Walsh, there was
Hold on.
kind of a,
Hold on,
I'm sorry.
one sec. That's all right. Yes.
A little history and maybe a little caution for future, let the staff review some things after the approval. So what we do is we have a blanket statement in the conditions of approval that say that the applicant will comply and address all the comments by peer review and staff. So in this case, there are a number of comments about that little driveway entrance that says you shouldn't have that driveway entrance. It doesn't comply with the ordinance. You should be combining up your entrance with the self-storage facility entrance. And a number of other comments that the self-storage facility folks need to come back and redo their plan so that the board can sign it, and they just haven't done that yet. So a little cautionary tale about leaving things hanging out there, because I guess it can be misconstrued. So what we would suggest for this applicant is that they look at the review memo and the conditions of approval and all the review comments from that approval that are still outstanding, so that they can redo some things on this plan. I think that would be informative to you and helpful, because there are a number of comments about that driveway access that says you should not be doing that for many reasons. And there's some things about the stormwater and whatever that you can gain some insight into to tweak this, because they still have to update the other folks, Patriot folks, need to update their plan in order for the board to sign it. So there's a little bit to do yet with that plan, but that's sort of my story of that, and suggestion for them to proceed with their own edits might be helpful to them.
Do you have access to that? Can you get access to that?
Oh, yes, we can send it.
I think we can.
Yeah.
It's certainly through the planning department records, right? So
Yes.
But my understanding was that the planning board did approve that project, but with conditions. And some of those conditions were like that.
Plan.
Wow.
Based on the peer review comments.
Interesting. Okay.
It's in it'll show up in your conditions of approval as well. Comply with all the peer review comments and the staff
Interesting.
comments.
Okay.
Or work with the staff kind of thing to resolve some issues.
The reason that, from what I understand, talking with Chris Taylor of Sebago Technics, was that they were waiting to revise the plans or get everything on them to have them come back for the board signature, waiting for the DEP to approve the stormwater systems and whatnot on the self-storage project, just in case there was any changes that needed to be made on from the DEP plan. They had their foot on the brake for a little while, which made complete sense to me. So, and I fully understand that the planning board, as well as us, would want to make sure that the stormwater systems are approvable, since we're relying on those too. So, obviously, that's very important. And I think one of the comments that came out early on was that obviously you folks are going to want to see that DEP approval. Makes total sense. So.
Yes, Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two questions, which will probably end up being three. A general question. I've heard that expression all my life. We all have dry goods. Could you tell me a little bit, what are dry goods?
Yeah, it's trying to think of.
Yeah, a couple of examples will suffice.
It's not really like a department store, but kind of think of a large, boy, try not to give too much away here.
Yeah, I know, you don't want to give away the confidence of your retailer.
Yeah, one of these stores that you go into that sells a little bit of everything, all right? And they have a little section for hardware, a little section for, some kind of food type stuff. They might have a little section of party supplies, whatever.
So would a
home furnishings, type stuff. Small little sections.
Would a six-pack of beer not qualify because beer is liquid?
That's a really good question. I know they would sell things like, soda and things like that, but it's a good question about alcohol sales. I'm not sure.
Okay, and that leads to a little more specific question. Looking at your diagram in the real time now, your proposed entrance would be the entrance for your delivery vehicles that are
Yes.
bringing this stuff?
Yep. So that it would be off-street loading. Yep. So the
And-
truck would be able to come in here, back in, unload, and go out. Dumpsters at this location, it'd be serviced by propane. We'd have a propane tank in an enclosure right here. So the building, by the way, would not be sprinklered. So I know that came up at at the review last week. So they're working on it with the architect right now on that. If it does have to be sprinklered, we'd be putting in a cistern for it. So.
And with respect to those delivery vehicles, what size would they be? Would they be like 18-wheelers or like just box trucks?
I would think that it would be an 18-wheeler, but not a big one. So that's a great question, Mr. Frank. We'll find that out.
Can I add to your question? Would it be the size of a fire truck, for example?
Yes, no problem. Yep, no problem at all.
Thought, yep.
It's a good question. And I think the fire department for the project review phase had no comments related to that, so.
What does the board think about the parking? You're proposing 36?
Yes.
Yeah, without knowing the exact nature of the goods that are going to emerge from that store and the volume of people who would patronize it, it's difficult to, I think, make a informed
Yeah, I understand.
guess as to parking.
I understand it's maybe a little premature right now, but I think we're pretty confident that we can demonstrate to the satisfaction of the board, when we get to that point. They've got some they've got data from other stores that can support that.
We've done the waivers on the parking. That's a big differential.
Yeah.
But if you have good backup, we'll see.
Yep, okay. Thank you. I think some of the questions that came up, it might be 7 to 9 employees, from what I understand. The hours of operation might be typically from 8 in the morning to 9 at night, 7 days a week. So it's not like it's a 24/7 operation. So.
I'm sorry, so it sounds, going back to the entrance question, it sounds like the staff is recommending not to approve the plan as shown because of the different entrances.
True, and we will send them the final review memo where you approved the previous plan for Patriot, so that he can look through all of the review comments.
Sure, but that was a completely different use than what this is, so.
It was shown as say a 10,000 square foot commercial building on the master plan.
To be developed at a future time.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Mr. Hager's got it. Yes, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm curious, there's 2 different owners here. How can we suggest that an adjacent business use someone else's driveway? And who maintains that? And if it gets torn up, finger pointing, you repair it, no, you repair it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
When the Patriot Holdings folks come in for their final review and approval from the staff and peer review, and they combine up the driveways, there will be an agreement for access to this parcel associated with it.
I somehow got the impression, and I might have been my misunderstanding, but I thought the understanding was that if we if we use the curb cut location that was on the approved plan, that we'd be fine. If we move that, then that was going to be problematic. And I don't know, maybe, I mean, that was early discussions with the town, and it might have been just a misunderstanding on my part.
And I guess if the property has changed hands and is with a different owner, who has a different vision for what the property is what's going to happen on the property, why would the previous plan proposal be? I don't understand why we would still be held to that previous plan proposal.
Well, let's say that we changed our minds. Let's say that this was the only lot and that approval wasn't available to us. We still need to comply with the ordinance as it exists today and all the review comments from the town's engineer, which recommends combining up the driveways and/or having access further away from the intersection.
From the intersection.
That's
Now, the ordinance does say entrances and uses in this district shall be combined to the maximum extent possible. It doesn't say shall. So there is some wiggle room in here.
what's the distance? Is it about 80 feet to the intersection?
Say again, Vincent?
What's this distance here?
It's about 100 feet.
100 feet?
Yep.
Yeah, more than 80, but not much more.
We'll be looking to our peer review engineer and our town engineer for comment on that.
Okay, so we don't have comment on that yet, is what you're saying?
There is a recommendation to combine it up with
From the existing,
from the
previous. Yes.
approval.
From what I understood from Mr. Taylor was that there was a plan showing the full bill. There was like a bank on there and a auto, whatever use. But anyway, on the east side or southeast side of the self-storage. But he said that the plan that showed the combined driveways was purely for the calculation and whatnot of the water and sewer extension costs, and should not have been used for any other purpose, is what I was told. So. And it's very interesting that that plan still shows that curb cut, which it's a little strange. It doesn't show that curb cut with a driveway connection to it, but does show it on the plan itself.
The shall condition. I just want to clarify something that was said. In the land use development code for this district, entrances and uses in this district shall be combined to the maximum extent possible. So,
to the maximum extent
but it is
possible,
a shall
right.
condition. Just want to clarify.
Okay, fair enough. Yep.
So, anything else we want to hit on, or? So we know what we'll be talking about next time.
Did we talk about the front of the store in
Not sure.
orientation?
I don't recall that.
I don't think we did.
No, I don't think so.
So to me, it's tied to where the entrance is, potentially. It's tied to where the entrance is. So if the entrance is going to change, then maybe I have a different opinion about the front of the store. I understand the desire here. It makes sense to me. Yep. Perfect sense. You want it to be visible to traffic on 25. Maybe that makes sense regardless of where the entrance is. But I think we'd want to have that resolved before we made a decision on the frontage of the store. But it completely makes sense to me.
Thank you.
I'm just one person.
Yeah, I think that does have an effect for sure.
I mean, to me, it's only logical that, why would you place a store on 25 if you couldn't face 25?
Right. And maybe you can design it if it had to come in from some other place that it still makes sense to have it on the front. But that's up to you guys.
If you remember the kind of the master planned one for the self-storage, they had vehicles coming down Dingley Spring Road, going up the self-storage driveway, coming in the back of the building, And so the front of the store, if you want to call that where the main entrance is on the opposite side of the building from Dingley Spring, from Ospey Trail. Doesn't make any sense. And something else I found interesting is that driving up that corridor, it seems like every commercial use on a corner lot has driveways onto both roads. So obviously I kind of know where the town is going through all this, but I mean, it's, yeah, we're just trying to be realistic and fair to the retailer without, frankly, coming up with a design that's a deal killer for them. You know, that they say, the heck with it, we're walking away. We're going to go to Standish or whatever, you know, I don't know. It's,
Anything else? Anything else from your end? Russell?
I thought about going back a moment to the parking, or paucity of. If your delivery vehicles, if you could arrange to have your delivery vehicles come in on the all-purpose storage road and then make a left turn and then bring your deliveries in from the east side of your proposed parking lot.
On this end?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would certainly make it nicer for your customers not to have to deal with delivery trucks in their parking lot. Just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, of course, store management usually can kind of regulate when when delivery trucks actually are coming and going, but, you know, they're not going to have deliveries there during peak hours by any means, but I hear what you're saying.
Oh, okay, I didn't think about that, but yeah.
Anything else?
I appreciate the feedback, I do, and obviously I need to go back and report all this and see what happens.
Well, good luck.
Well, thank you.
Your day's work is
Hopefully not too bad.
What's that?
I said your day's work is not done.
Nope, I'm sure I'll be on the phone headed back. So, but anyway, thank you very much for your time, I appreciate it. Hopefully you can squeeze in a couple more.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, you too.
Ahead at the rest of the agenda, looks like we will be able to take item 8, but if you're here for 9 or 10, unfortunately, it looks like we won't be able to get to those. Yeah, we'll definitely not take any more. No, but the next meeting is definite?
18th.
March 18th. So if you're here for those other items, March 18th will be the next meeting.
Well, just a question, Mr. Chair. I think we had established earlier that there may not be a quorum on the 18th.
Was it the
Maybe it was the week after.
25th? I'm sorry, March 25th. I'm sorry about that. March 25th.
That's right.
Confirm it in writing as it comes out. I don't know what I'm saying at this point, but yeah, I think it's March 25th. I think it's March 25th. I apologize for the confusion. It normally would have been the other date, but later.
Officially striking 9 and 10?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I don't think we'll be able to get to those in 10 minutes.
All you can do is
But
try.
if we did, we did. So, oop. So that brings us to item 8, which is discussion, private way, Greg McCormick, Samantha Drive. A request for approval to construct a 323-foot private way to serve a future single-family house lot. M104, lot 10.003, map 24, lot 7.004 and zoned UR. The applicant is represented by someone at BH2M. And if we could have background from planning.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. This is the second time this application has come before the board. You saw this probably 6 or 8 months ago, I believe. It's been a little while, so it's brand new to at least one of you. Some of the notes that the staff has made for you to take a look at or focus in on. The proposed lot line that runs through the middle of the property should be removed if the applicant does not intend to divide the property at this time. The proposed private way is to be constructed through a publicly owned right-of-way. Therefore, it will need to be open to the public for their use. The plan lists a 20-foot snow storage easement to the town. The town already owns this land, therefore the granting of an easement would not be necessary. And the plan can be revised to reflect that and refer to the 20-foot wide snow storage area. Just plain language. The private way is super elevated to promote improved winter maintenance management. The super elevation will cause snow melt to drain to the northern side of the way towards the snow storage area to reduce ice buildup in the wintertime. The applicant should be aware that they will be required to connect development at the lot serviced by this private way to public water and sewer, not on-site well and septic, and the plan should reflect that accordingly. And with that, I turn it over to the board.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Austin Fagan, here with the BH2M. I'm filling in for Andy Morrill tonight, who is the project engineer, project manager. As Carol so kindly stated, this project was seen in January of 2023, I believe the memo says was the last time the board saw the project. Or excuse me, that was a staff meeting. Plans had been revised since the last time it was seen by the board in order to stagger the private way within the right-of-way in order to allow that 20-foot snow storage area. That was a comment from Public Works, just looking for some way to mitigate effects of this private way on the existing Samantha Drive. There were comments from the fire department. The proposed project is a private way that will be constructed within the existing easement. The fire department's issues were there being a driveway off of the hammerhead. This is technically an extension of a roadway, not a driveway, in an existing easement, so we feel that it meets the criteria of what was the intent of the right-of-way on the previous Samantha Drive. As Carol stated, planning also had some comments, needing to update a signature block, maybe a note that the private way will be of public use because it's within a public right-of-way, removal of the easement, the 20-foot easement, since it is town-owned. We can get rid of that relatively easily. And we understand that well and septic will not be permittable for this lot, and it will need to be public utilities. That being said, all of the required changes are somewhat superficial. We're not looking at any design changes realistically. We'd hope that the board would find that this item can either be approved or placed on consent agenda at the next meeting, pending these changes being made. Thank you.
Thank you. Seems pretty straightforward.
I think so.
Any comments from the board? Yes, David.
Just one question. I know if I recall the last time this came before, there was an issue of I don't know if it was poor notification, improper notification, or just missed notification of abutters. Have butters been properly notified of this project?
I'm not aware. I did not notify them myself. I don't know if planning staff may be able to help with that. As I said, I'm filling in for Andy, so.
We have a specific requirement for notification, and so we work within those parameters. Sometimes the distance amount does not get to everyone in a neighborhood. And so if you live, 500 feet away, but you're in the same neighborhood and you don't get notified, some people feel.
I recall there was just one who was very close to it who said they were notified. Maybe my recollection is off, but I just want to make sure.
That person was on our notification list.
Okay, very good.
Thank you, Carol.
I don't have anything further.
Thank you.
Can you just talk again about the distinction between your, the extension of the right-of-way or the extension of the private way versus a driveway?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the fire chief had stated that no driveways will be installed off of a hammerhead.
Right.
This is the previous plan that was approved for Park South condominiums. And this is the hammerhead of Samantha Drive, but off of that hammerhead is a right-of-way that allowed access to this lot.
Okay.
So though this is a, more or less, for all intents and purposes, a driveway for one lot, it is classified as a private way, so therefore it's permittable within that allocation of right-of-way.
And what is the town, what is this, besides the, I know what the fire chief's comments on, what's the staff comment on that? Is there one?
Other than the only thing that they would have to look at is the extension of a driveway off the proposed new hammerhead. So it'd be somewhere in the middle usually is where people are getting their access for the driveway.
So it doesn't actually interrupt the hammerhead?
Correct, yeah. So with the, what is proposed here, realistically, the driveway would either come to the end off of here. I'm not positive if it can come through the angle point, or in this location. So there are multiple spots where a driveway could come off for the proposed residence. Or any future residents, I should say.
Okay.
I think I've seen them off the angle as well, right? Yeah, so they can come off the angle as well. I don't know. I don't have any other comments. No one else does. Maybe you have a motion. Yes, Jim.
Chairman, I'm ready for a consent agreement if the board is willing to consider that. Just a consensus before I read it.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion to further review Greg McCormick's request for private way extension approval to a future consent agenda, pending the submission of revised information addressing outstanding staff and planning board comments.
Is there a second?
Second.
Delaney, and then all in favor? Looks like 7-0.
Thank you for your time. On the nose.
Does the board want to slip in one more? It's question on the line.
You okay with it? We had people leave based on your statement that they wouldn't.
That's right. The applicant is here, and his engineer is here as well.
I'm saying we had people leave based on your earlier statement that we.
I didn't tell them to leave. I said it doesn't look like we'll get there.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, if that's what you want, if you don't want to do it, I'm open. I'm not making the call. The board will make the call. So if you think that's reason.
Yeah. I think they were upset enough about not getting to it, and if they sat here for a couple hours, and if we do it now, they'll really be pissed.
Do you want to make a motion to adjourn? Does someone want to make that motion?
Motion to adjourn.
I raised it, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
He made the motion. Do you want to second it?
Oh,
You want to second it?
Second.
Second? All in favor? Like 6-1. Almost.
Mr. Chair, is that in or opposed?
Opposed.
6-1. Yep.
Conscious vote.
Okay.
All right. Have a good night. I guess we need a motion to adjourn for the evening, though, right? Oh, no, we did the motion.
That wasn't
I apologize.
adjourned.
I apologize.
You should adjourn.